Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. So today we have a special treat. We have my other producer, Dave DeAngelis, that's on the show with me. There he is. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Glenn. Hi, everybody.
So he's kind of going to be doing Ben's job today, filling in. And we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to your heart, dealing with loss.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, how long ago was it? It wasn't that long ago that your father passed.
My father passed away last June.
Last June. Holy cow. I didn't even realize it was that long.
I sometimes forget as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, it feels like it could have been yesterday, but also like a couple years ago. Like you can't really tell.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the waves, I think it comes in where, it completely has both parts. It's like in certain ways, it's like it just happened. And then sometimes in other ways or in other moments of time, which I think is really just our state of mind, depending on our state of mind, depending on the place we're in, and kind of everything is like this. So it's really a good way to explain it to people, because like sometimes I'll talk about being in good space and being in bad space. And, I think some people are like, well, what's that mean? And, or perception is reality, and this is a really good example of that because it's extreme. Yep. So, and most people have experienced a version of it or can identify with it to some degree. So it's like, this is, when you're in a certain headspace where when you're thinking about the loss, it's consuming you and, and there's large amounts of grief. Well, that's the space you're in. And, and then all of a sudden 2 days later, you're just sitting there. Nothing's technically different. And all of a sudden you go, well, this is part of life and I need to accept it. And then all of a sudden you're kind of more chill with it. It's when you're in those different spaces, whatever you're experiencing is your reality. If you're in a really emotional, difficult time and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you're just in bad space. Don't worry about it. It's really not that big of a deal. You probably want to choke them. So because, it's like, it's all consuming. That's how you're interacting with life at that moment. It's not just, it doesn't feel like it's just how you're looking at things in that moment. It's your reality. And it's completely your reality and it's all encompassing. And if anybody tries to minimize that, it's inappropriate. It's non-compassionate. It's non-realistic, So, that it's completely real. But then again, 2 days later, all of a sudden you're in a different space and somebody says the same thing that they said 2 days earlier. And it's like, yeah, well, that's kind of true. And, and so this is what's meant by, your perception is your reality. It's literally that much. I say that kind of flippantly, and I think a lot of people say it. Oh, your perception's your reality.
Yeah, it's all how you see it.
yeah, it's all how you see it. And everybody kind of says that until they're in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That once you're in it, all of a sudden it's like, no, you don't freaking understand. Like, this is serious. This is my entire reality. And it's, so, I think that is actually might lead into one of the ways that we can help deal with it and process it. is if you can put, like, you don't have to try to change your reality. Like, if you're consumed by grief at the moment and that's your reality, you don't necessarily have to try to change that and say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this grief. I should get out of this grief and I should go into that other more pleasant space over here. You don't have to do that. But what you can do is just try to, little by little, practice becoming aware that sometimes you're in this space and sometimes you're in other space. That's it. That just puts a little distance between you and the grief.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's just it just makes it like that much more manageable, because that it helps you wrap your brain around the reality that it's not going to be this intense forever, that you're going to have good days too. And I think that that's really the biggest part of dealing with grief, because grief, you have to process some of it. You have to feel some of that. You have to allow yourself to experience the sadness that comes along with a loss like that, because it's real and it needs to be felt. Otherwise, you're just stuffing it, and that's really not good. I mean, it's not good to stuff like when you get cut off in traffic.
Yeah.
So stuffing a giant loss of somebody that you love dearly, that's like really detrimental. That's like, I mean, because it's going to come out.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming out. Like we think we're so like talented, I've been stuffing for 40 years, like, yeah, I got this. I just need to be busier, or I need to drink more, or I need an antidepressant from my doctor, or, I need to binge watch another television show, or, whatever.
That's when you end up having a complete breakdown at some point when you don't expect it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Complete, utter breakdown. Like my friend committed suicide. Well, one of many people, unfortunately, that I've known over the years, but a close friend of mine a couple of years ago. And I thought I was being all responsible with my emotions, so I'm going in and I'm going like, okay, how do I feel about this? Make sure I don't stuff. And I felt some emotions come up, but I've done quite a bit of work. I mean, this is a big, like, death is a huge thing, I mean, it's kind of the biggest. So, so like so since it's large and important and it's a big deal, I've done work on that. I've gone in and what do I think about death? What do I think about my own death? Like, I've done a lot of work around this general topic, personal to me, as far as my life, as well as the lives of other people. And I feel like I've got a healthy perspective around death, that we're all going to experience it and there's nothing wrong with it. And that makes my transition of processing these events easier, I think. I still get surprised every once in a while, because, I think I have, just because I have a healthy outlook, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to experience grief or sadness. And I noticed that when my grandmother passed. She was the last grandparent I had that passed, and I was really in good space around it. I mean, she lived a long life. It just, I was in good space. But then at the funeral, the level of sadness that came up and out surprised me a little, because it was still there. And but it was cool. I embraced it. I allowed myself to feel it, and I didn't judge it, and it was good. And when my friend passed away, I tried to be responsible with my emotions like that again. And I immediately went. I was still in Rhode Island. I immediately went up to Massachusetts and spent some time with his girlfriend and his sister, who I had known, and tried to stay in touch. And I still try to stay in touch with them. And like I kind of was focused on trying to help them because it was just such a shocking and difficult time that I tried to focus on them. I guess I think I needed to.
Yeah.
I think I needed to focus on them because I really tried going in and nothing was coming out. And then like I forgot how long it was, like a month or two later, kind of once some of the dust settled, I was driving to go somewhere for a weekend retreat, and all of a sudden it just started. I just started crying. I hopped in my car in Rhode Island and I was driving out to Cape Cod, and I started crying and I didn't know why. And I think the drive was like an hour and a half, and about halfway there, I started going like, why am I crying? Like, I don't even know. I don't know why I'm crying. And I'm like, is it because of my friend? And as soon as I said that, boom, I just upped the ante, and I started crying harder and harder. And I was like, oh my God. And I had stuffed a lot. And I got to the retreat, or right outside the retreat, and I texted and I said, I can't do this. I'm going home. And I turned around and drove back. And I had the weekend because my son was staying at a friend's house. And I just spent that weekend just diving in, feeling, processing, crying, purging, thinking, just working my way through it. And it was very helpful, of course. Yeah. It was very helpful, but it was so interesting that I didn't even know, like, as aware as I think that I am around my emotions, it blindsided me. When it was ready to come out, it was coming out. Yep. And there wasn't anything I could do to stop it. So, I think, and so that's, goes in line with what you said. It's going to come out one way or another.
Oh yeah. Those floodgates will open whether you want them to or not.
Yeah. So I mean, what's your experience been up until this point?
I think I've never been one to stuff emotions down at all, which is good in a way. In other ways, some people would probably prefer if I did. Well, it's that Catholic guilt, right? I don't lie, and I can't be. I literally feel like I can't be disingenuous. So if I'm going through something, I'm pretty much letting everyone know whether it's appropriate or not. So I'm kind of in the opposite direction of that, where it's like maybe stuff a little bit down in appropriate moments. But
yeah.
But for this specific situation, it was such a different experience for me. Like my emotions weren't all over the place like I thought they would be, and I wonder if it was because I was just planning on it for so long, because my dad was really ill, not with it's not like cancer or something. It was like diabetes, kidney failure. So it was a very long and drawn out process where it was like he's okay, but at any point something could happen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just to give context, he had received a kidney transplant in 2013. It went well for a few months, and then there was issues where they said eventually he was going to die again, and then he would need another transplant at some point, which to me seemed a little risky, but that was the situation we were in. So after a few years, he was back on dialysis, and then he was waiting for a transplant. He really, really wanted it. That was his thing. He knew the risks, but it was basically like, I want my life back, so I'm willing to risk it to get it back. And it did not go great. The transplant went well, but he had complications later that ended up that was it. And it was one of those things where it was like, I can't believe it's actually happening now, because it's all I mean is that it's probably a lot different than, everybody expects their parents to pass away at some point, and you're not excited for it, and you're not really stoked about being ready for it. But I had like this, like, I feel like it was a little more specific of like there's more of a chance, and I feel like I weirdly felt at peace about it, but I didn't want to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I didn't really feel at peace about it. Like, it wasn't like I wasn't okay with it, but I did
Acceptance.
I had accepted it before, I think. So I was kind of just like, all right, let's do this. Let's get through what we have to get through right now, the initial stuff, and then I'll do what I can to process it over time. I feel like I've done okay, but, I don't stuff it down, but I do have my moments where I just like, it hits me more when I'm not really doing anything specific. And then my mind will wander and I'll be like, oh, what have I been doing the past half hour? Oh, I've been like lost in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's when it comes up when we're not busy.
Yeah.
I think it's one of our it's such a gigantic defense mechanism in our society. Like, why are we so busy? I mean, really, there's no, it makes zero sense. I mean, we have increased technology dramatically to make our lives and everything we do so much easier, take so much less time. We can, with the enhancements that we've developed in the last 100 years, we can do twice the amount of work in half the time, yet we are busier than we ever were before. It doesn't make any sense. So, we don't have to do this much, like, so there's for our society to function, it's not necessary. So, I mean, there's got to be a payback for it. And the payback is that it's distraction. And I think this is part of the spiritual shift that's happening. And I think this whole topic is really, I mean, it's dealing with things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing how, like, we don't have as big of an ability to just shove things off to the side as generations did in the past. Or maybe they just had, like in this particular situation, maybe they just had a more realistic outlook, like from living on farms and people getting, people getting shot over card games. Uncle Jimmy died. It happens. I mean, he had a full house. He kind of deserved it.
I mean, yeah.
And I mean, even living on farms, I noticed a dramatic difference between people who live on farms or grew up on farms and people who don't, just because of the animals. I mean, that it makes a difference when, you're eating your pet for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's a thing that you need to process as a child to understand the cycle. Mm-hmm. So, like, that there's stuff like that makes a difference. And I think nowadays, we can't stuff emotions like we used to, plus our reality is different. And this stuff is going to come up and out. And now, depending on when you're listening to this, we're in the middle of a pandemic now.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is this is one of the things that I think the universe is trying to show us is it's trying to stop all this busyness and going, slow down, everyone. Just stop for a minute. You guys all have so much emotion and undealt with issues inside of you that you're just going busier and busier and busier, distracting yourself so you don't have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Like, stop. And people are stopping, and it's starting to bubble up. And I think we're going to see more and more of it over the coming weeks. Where, we can't stuff it. This stuff needs to be dealt with and it needs to be felt. Yeah. And I think that the biggest, so with death, and I know I've said this before on podcasts that we've had around this subject, I think the biggest problem with dealing with death specifically is that it's just like most things. We blend a bunch of things together and then wonder why we have difficulty processing it.
Yeah.
So we're blending, and I think the two biggest, and of course there's variations of this, but the two biggest things we're blending is grief and sadness. So, of course, when somebody you love dies and is no longer on this earth to where you can have physical conversations with them, I think it's normal to feel a sense of loss and sadness. So that's normal. And then we take this unconscious belief system that's in our society that there's something wrong with death, and we blend those two together. And it's nearly impossible to process that because it's two things combined for one. And one of those two things is not true. So it's kind of hard to process something that isn't true, So like there isn't anything wrong with death. Nobody, we didn't sign a contract that said we're all going to live until 93 while we're here on Earth. And if like you don't live until 93, then there's something wrong. None of us have a guaranteed amount of time, and it's not. And I don't say that to say, oh, okay, so you shouldn't be sad. No, that it's two different things. There's sadness, there's grief. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a normal processing of a situation that you wouldn't have chosen to have happen. I get it, but that if it's only that, then we have a shot. But if we bring in this unconscious belief system that there's something wrong with death, now all of a sudden it makes it kind of insurmountable and almost impossible to deal with. Yeah. And it's reinforced in our society. Like I forgot who it was. It might have been Eckhart Tolle or somebody talked about this years ago, and it amazed me at how society really reinforces this idea that there's something wrong with death. Like as soon as somebody dies, they throw a sheet over them, and like if it's out in public, they have to get them out, hide them somewhere so nobody can see them, and the first thing that everybody says, no matter what the situation is I'm sorry. Yep. Which implies that there's something wrong. And it doesn't matter. Like, you see it on Facebook, like, oh, my grandfather died at 102, and lived a wonderful life. I'm sorry. All these comments. I'm sorry. Like, what are you sorry about? The guy lived a great life, and it was his time to move on. There's nothing wrong with the situation. We don't have to apologize for it. Yeah. So if there's something wrong with death, I mean, not only every person is screwed, but every plant, every animal, everything on this planet is screwed. The whole system is broke, which I don't think it is. So,
yeah.
So what are your, I'm talking in a kind of a detached, matter-of-fact way to try to bring an outlook that's not as common into this.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I didn't really think about it like that, but I have thought about it, and like I didn't think about it the first part with like how it's like shameful and it's like cover the body, and it's like that's interesting. But I have always thought about like when it is like my elderly grandfather who had a full life. It's like, I'm sorry. It's like, why are you sorry? Like it's not that. It's sorry for the fact that you can't, as you said, like have a conversation with them, and that's one thing. But like, good for them, right? I mean, I've always had a bit of a perspective like that my parents gave me, I think, which was they let me know that, and I was like, you're right, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's really good. It's funny like that, how it's you should separate it. It's a totally different. The sadness is different from the fact that like we're not all guaranteed to live till we're 100. It's just
No, it's not written anywhere.
no.
You know, like not even in stone somewhere. Like, so yeah, it's completely different, and the sadness, and you know, I think another thing that's kind of common around this thing that I see is a lot is you know, especially in extreme grieving situations. There's this thing that people latch onto that says life will never be the same. You know, and of course, I mean, you know, it moves my heart to even bring this up, but you know, we see it even more so like when children pass,
Right?
because that just, man, that just really screws with your head. You know, like, come on. I mean,
Yeah,
children,
exactly.
You know,
Come on. That's
yeah,
exactly-
like, yeah, it's like,
Really?
you know, all right, I'll deal with the heart attack at 50 thing, but like, come on, really?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
So, but you know, it's that's the most obvious, but people do it at really any age, and many different situations where they look at it and it's like, my life is never going to be the same. No, it's not. But I'm just gonna say this, and then I'm gonna explain it a little bit more because it might sound harsh when I first say it.
Right.
Life is never going to be the same anyway. Like, literally nothing specific has happened today, and starting tomorrow, my life will never be the same.
Exactly.
It's you know, that's kind of how things are. You know, it's just, that's life unfolding. So it's not this big, oh my God, life's never going to be the same. So now bring in the specific of the situation. Life's never going to be the same because I lost this person that I care about dramatically. And if we want to bring in even more emotion attached to it, it was a younger person. It was a child. Because that's even harder to process. So it's like, well, no, life isn't going to be the same. It's not supposed to. It's not going to be the same after you get into a car crash. It's not, even if everybody's okay, it's not going to be the same after you lose somebody that you care about. It's not going to be the same after you get a new job. It's not going to be the same after you meet a new friend. It's not going to be the same ever. Now, is losing a child or losing a loved one in general going to change it even more dramatically? Yes, it will. You know, absolutely. And the, you know, the processing of it and learning to function in new ways, it's probably going to be one of the hardest things you ever do. Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm not comparing the intensity to making a new friend. What I'm doing is I'm saying of course it's never going to be the same. Loosen your grip on life's never going to be the same, because of course it's never going to be the same. No matter what happens to you, it's never going to be the same. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly growing. We're constantly finding new ways to function after things happen. That's what life is. It's, you know, so like, and the reason I bring this up is because if you don't look at it consciously, what my life is never going to be the same turns into is I'm going to be carrying this horrible sensation and feeling for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
That's what it turns into if you don't look at it. You know, if you just run around saying my life's never going to be the same, unconsciously what you're implying is that I'm going to be miserable forever. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it takes this little thing of hope and it pulls it right out of your life, and you don't have any chance of ever experiencing any sense of peace or normality in any way, shape, or form. And that's what's dangerous. You know, that's why I bring it up, is because latching on to a little thought like that can suck the hope out of anything ever resembling normality in any way. And like I said, that's what's dangerous.
Absolutely. I think, not to, reach it all, but I feel like, dealing with loss right now, people are losing a lot of things and their lives are never going to be the same because
Right.
of many reasons. Like they've lost their jobs, they've lost their sense of normalcy. And I feel like in the same way, if you do latch onto that right now, then you're going to have a really tough time adjusting and evolving from that point, because we have to, right?
Right.
No matter what, we have to start evolving and trying to
Yeah.
adjust. And I feel like it's easy to just wallow in that in any situation, especially like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It is a nice kind of mirror image of what we're going through right now with all the difficulties. That's another big lesson I think that we're supposed to be taking out of this, is that, this sense of safety that we think we have is illusory. It doesn't exist. People think that if they have a steady job, then they're safe. And if you don't have a steady job, that's affected by commission, that or gigs, or clients, or something that doesn't have a steady flow of income all the time, then we'll point to the people who have the steady job and we go, see, well, they're the lucky ones.
Yep.
At least they have some stability. I don't have that. No, they don't have it either.
As we can see,
it looks more like they do.
Yeah.
But really, when crap hits the fan, they kind of don't.
Yeah. All bets are off at that point.
Right. And that's what we're seeing now. And we're seeing more of a realistic view of life, in my opinion. We're seeing the reality that we don't have. There is no safety here on earth. We can't control what happens in our life. And if we take our hands off of it and stop trying to control it, then all of a sudden, we can start developing a different way of interacting with the world, where we're more accepting of it. And when things happen, I know that, I've been teaching this stuff for years, and I know this has enhanced my life more. Like I'll give you a little example. Just out on my bike rides, what I noticed I was doing is, it's like when you're riding a bike, just keeping the flow going is really enjoyable. So stopping every time you hit an intersection kind of breaks that flow.
Right.
So I like being able to go through intersections, and especially down here in Florida, everything is wide open. You can see for quite a distance. So like I noticed what I was doing is I was projecting ahead as I was coming to an intersection, like, oh, I hope there's no cars there. And then if there was, it was like, oh, I have to stop. And I was riding the other day and I was like, why am I trying to control life? Like, why did I set this rule for happiness that if there are no cars at an intersection and I get to cruise right through, then life is good. And if I have to stop, then life is bad. Like, how controlling is that of me? How presumptuous, Yeah. So I was like, why don't I just relax and go, I don't give a crap if there's a car there or not. If there is, I'll deal with it. Like, I'll stop if I have to stop, and I won't if I don't have to. And it's the amount of freedom I experienced by not trying to control the cars coming at an intersection. I was like, this is really enjoyable. So of course I'm trying to do it in every situation.
Well, that's really good, because that's kind of where I'm at right now. Right, every day I'm like, as we all are, we're all thinking of all the horrible things that could potentially happen or could not happen. But I really am trying to do that, where it's like, if something happens, we will deal with it. Why am I fully expecting everything to go wrong, and how is that going to help me today?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And that's exactly it. It's not. It's like I heard years ago, it's like paying interest on a loan that you haven't gotten.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know, like you're paying with your worry. Oh my God, what if this happens? And I mean, negative toxins are shooting through your body. Stress is increasing, lowering your immune system. You know, and that's physically, not to mention what you're doing to yourself mentally, driving yourself crazy and putting yourself into a negative headspace and all this just horrible existence that we're inducing upon ourselves for what? Like it literally does not make us any better. In fact, it hurts us by lowering our immune system and all the other physical aspects that it attacks, but in the negative headspace. But there is zero positive benefit to it. Like, it doesn't make us more prepared. You know, that's people get caught up in fear and they think that makes them more prepared. It actually makes you less prepared. This is hence the toilet paper. You know, because you do stuff that literally doesn't make sense. Right? You know,
what is this? What are you doing?
Toilet paper. Like,
you're clearly losing it.
Does it make you crap? Does this virus make you crap? No. Okay, then why are you hoarding? Why all of a sudden is there going to be a problem with toilet paper? Toilet paper. Like, is anybody there? No, their brain shuts down. Your brain tries to force you into fight or flight when you're fearful. So your brain literally shuts down. There's less blood flow to your brain. So you're thinking less clearly. And you make worse decisions because your body doesn't want you thinking. If a tiger, you know, I've said this before, if a tiger was chasing you when our mechanisms were developed, you know, thousands of years ago, if a tiger is chasing you, nature doesn't want you doing math. You know, it wants you to either run or fight. That's it. So it's trying to push you there. So you think less clearly. So like if you just stop, relax, go, okay, this is the situation. This is the facts of the situation. Is there any action that I need to take from a calm space? Well, I could go to the grocery store and stock up on some things that I might need if I'm stuck in the house for a while. Okay. And then you take that action and then you come home. Fear is unnecessary. It doesn't benefit you by getting all worked up and panicking over what might or might not happen. You know, it's like anything. Like, do I need to get gas before I hit the highway? Yes. Okay, then I'll stop and get gas. There's no fear shooting through you. You know,
it's not like I'm just gonna go for it. No, I really hope I don't run out.
Yeah, it's, you know, you can still use your. People think that they function better through fear, and they don't. You know, they function worse.
How dare you?
I know. How dare I strip that away? But you know what's nice, Dave. I've known you for years, and you know, look at what this has pushed you into. A healthier way of being.
Yeah. And
this is what everything can do. This is what loss can do. This is what a difficult situation can do. You know, and I know we didn't talk too much right when your father passed, but I mean the stuff that Ben told me, I mean, I was moved at how beautiful an experience, because, you know, I was looking at it basically unattached and going, okay, how's Dave dealing with this? What's going on with his family from an outside perspective? And I was moved at how beautiful the experience was from a distance, because I wasn't all caught up in the grief and the loss of it. And I was like, oh my God, I mean, it still moves me thinking of it. It was beautiful. It really got you in touch with a beautiful side of yourself, which is, you know, this is so we'll bring it home with the spiritual law that this represents. And, you know, what it represents, I think the biggest one right now is it's not what happens, it's how we deal with it. So it's not whether there's a car at the intersection or not. It's how I deal with it that determines my happiness. It's not whether somebody passes that I love or not. It's what I use that situation to do for me. that makes a difference. Do I use it to close off? Do I use it to shut down? Do I use it to become a lesser version of myself and constrict because it's too painful for me to deal with? Or do I use it to open me up to become a better version of myself? And everything is like that. Absolutely everything in this planet is, we have a choice. We either open or close. We either choose love or fear. We either constrict or we open. It's either an opportunity to become a better version of ourselves, or it's a reason to close off and be a worse version of ourselves. And that is solely up to us. We have free will. Everybody has a choice. And from what I saw, you chose your father passing as an opportunity to become a better version of yourself. And there is no bigger blessing that you can give to somebody that passed, because they're on the other side. They're fine. Yeah. So whatever we're dealing with is our crap. Mm-hmm. Like they're fine, and it doesn't matter what your beliefs are. I mean, most people believe in something, so we'll lean in that direction. Okay, well, they're in loving peace and beauty and bliss forever. Oh, poor you. They're fine. Or somebody believes in nothing. Okay, well, they're not. They're literally in the ground and they aren't experiencing anything. So there's no reason to feel sorry for them because they're literally not even conscious anymore. So it doesn't matter what you believe. Yeah. Everything's fine with them. Mm-hmm. So it's about us, and how can we honor the lives of somebody that we loved? I mean, and I think the best way is to flip flop it. If I pass, the last thing that I'm ever going to want anybody here on earth is to walk around carrying this bag of shame, guilt, and horrible feelings around attached to me. Yeah. Like, that's the last thing that I'm going to want.
Bummer.
I mean, what I want is everybody going, you know what, man, that dude was a flash in the pan. He was fun when he was here. Yeah. He did some good stuff. Cool. Now he's up there. I'm sure he's up there laughing his butt off at us. And, and just enjoying the memory of me and moving on with your life. I don't think that if you walk around through life moaning because I'm no longer here, that means you loved me.
Yeah. And you're not really doing you a service.
No.
That's what I have thought about that, about the last possible thing that my dad would want is that.
It's the last possible thing anybody would want, even if they're saying it on their deathbed. Yeah. Because once they cross over, the eyes are going to pop open. They're going to go, oh, my God, I can't believe I was telling people to mourn me. What an idiot I was.
And then you would just wish for them to find peace. And
absolutely. People, love is eternal. We're not. I mean, our bodies aren't. Our spirit is. It can't be, nothing real can be threatened. Love cannot be threatened. Love is eternal. So the love that you and your father have between you is eternal. Mm-hmm. So if he's looking down in love, the last thing that he wants is for you to feel crappy in any way, shape, or form. The most he would want is for you to live the fullest version of yourself and to express yourself as fully as possible and to embrace love and life as opposed to fear. That's what somebody would want. So if we're trying to show somebody how much we love them, then do that. Embrace life. Embrace what they would want you to be embracing. That's how you honor somebody. You don't honor somebody by not giving them what they would want. I honor you. I will be miserable forever in your honor.
Yeah.
And I know that you don't want that because it doesn't make any sense, but I'm going to do it anyway because I honor you.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's gaining perspective. Death is like most things, man. It's not rocket science. It's about pumping the brakes, slowing down, and really looking at, does this make sense? And to become a lesser version of yourself in the name of loving somebody else it's incongruent energies.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm gonna close off in misery because of love. Like
when you break things down like this, that's a really easy way to go, well, that doesn't make any logical sense. I can't do this. When you get caught up in it, it's a lot different. When you break it down like you just did, it's like, well, why would you do that then?
Right. And that's what we have to constantly do.
Yeah.
That's what we have to constantly do. We run around behaving in ways that are socially acceptable unconsciously that don't make any sense. And we just don't slow down to look at them and go, wait a minute, like what, why? Like how? You know, yeah, for what, like, why is this supposedly going to make sense? And it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense. And I think, you know, we're seeing a lot of this. Like I said, I believe that everything going on with this pandemic is an opportunity for growth and change because the way we're doing things isn't working. And that's what we just said, right? Like if you look at what you're doing, it doesn't work. It literally doesn't make any logical sense. Mm-hmm. That's what we're trying to do here. Yeah. Slow down and look at the way we're living and understand loving.
Oh, there you go.
Freudian slip there.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know, look at it and understand that it literally doesn't make any sense, and just choose a way that does. You know, that's what I think that gives me the biggest jazzy feeling about spirituality, is because when I used to hear about religion and spirituality, I used to think that it was this woo-woo philosophical, theoretical stuff that floated around and it never did anything. And when I really understood how it worked, I was like, oh my God, this makes logical, perfect sense. And the way people are living life doesn't. Like everything that they say is logical lacks all logic. And everything they say is woo-woo and spiritual is perfectly logical. You know? Yeah.
I love it.
Well, we went way over with this one, but it's a big topic, so be it. And plus, we haven't talked in a while, so
yeah, that's true.
So we have multiple excuses.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Well, thanks for being part of this, Dave. I think it's, you know, and I think that, I guess in closing, I think it's important for people to understand that, you know, for you really did go through, you know, the passing of your father was a big deal. Like some people aren't as close to their parents. Some people, you know, whatever. There's different situations, and I'm not judging any of them. What I'm saying is, when your father passed, it was a big deal. He was a big patriarch in your family. It was a big deal, and so. The reason I say that is because, you know, if you can have a conversation like we just had here, after a large loss like that, I'm hoping that people are going to understand that no matter what you're feeling inside with your loss, that it's possible for you to have a conversation like this also. And, you know, it's possible to relax a little bit and start opening. You don't have to dive right in and be like, oh, this is going to be my new reality. Nothing bothers me anymore. Mm-hmm. No, it's chipping away at it a little at a time, hanging on to the hope. When you're caught up in the misery, allow yourself to feel a little bit, but then bring in some of that other way of thinking, a little at a time, a little at a time, a little at a time, where all of a sudden that side starts to get a little bit bigger. And after you process some of the sadness, that aspect gets a little bit smaller. And you don't have to worry. You're not going to forget anybody.
Right, exactly.
You know, people think like, oh, if I start suffering, I'm going to forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, there's no way. Don't worry. You're not going to forget anybody that you loved. And your life is going to become, if you do this properly, your life is going to be a living monument to them. And what's better than that? You know.
I love it.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you to Dave for doing this one.
Thank you.
And we'll talk with you all soon.
Glenn is available for life coaching sessions.
To book an appointment or for more information, go to glennambrose.com, follow him on Facebook and Twitter, or click the link in the description of this episode.